Hello and welcome to the gorgeous UAE Pavilion and the first in a series on Dreamer Dialogues. I'm your moderator for the evening, Kelsey Warner. I'm the future editor at The National, where I cover what trends and technologies are reshaping society. Through these dialogues here tonight, the UAE Pavilion is aiming to shed light on some of society's most pressing issues and provide a platform for exchange between dreamers, those whose work in the UAE is highlighted in the pavilion below and behind us, and industry experts. Today we're talking on a subject dear to my heart as the granddaughter of a New England farmer, ag tech and food security, specifically efforts being made here in the UAE that can be exported to the world in the interplay of innovation, security, and traditional farming. So this is an urgent balance against a backdrop of a rising population and the growing realities of climate change. And we have a stacked panel here with us this evening to unpack these issues. Joe Pangavasan, the lead project manager at Smart Acres, Dr. Tarifa El-Zabi, Acting Director General at International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, and Yazan El-Kadmani, Deputy General Manager at Emirates Biofarm. So to frame us all up and get us all started, can each of you just briefly 30-second elevator pitch for the mission and core work of your organizations?
My name. First of all, I'm very much delighted to be here again as dreamers. We need to be positive, and everything we do at International Center for Biosaline Agriculture is positive. We speak about positivity when it comes to helping the farmers. We are a research for development institute. We work in 35 countries. We are hosted by the government of United Arab Emirates. We were founded in 1999 by the government of United Arab Emirates and Islamic Development Bank. So we do research when it comes to crops, finding alternative sources of water, as well as looking at technologies and how can we really use them for applied science to make Earth a better place for people.
Okay. My name is Yazan Al-Kadmani. I manage Emirates Biofarm. We're the largest organic farm in the UAE. Our mission is to promote sustainable organic agriculture, as well as try and influence food policy, food agenda towards sustainable food production methods and agriculture methods, to take the learnings that we have established in the long history in the UAE and share them with the rest of the world, as we all share the same challenges moving forward in terms of arid climate and water insecurity.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Apisit Joe Pongsavan, the project manager for Smart Acres. We are a hydroponic vertical farm based out of Abu Dhabi. We want to go beyond the traditional vertical farm in a sense that we want to grow more than dark leafy greens. We would like to focus on functional crops, lettuces that consumers with dietary needs and medical ailments would benefit from. We also would like to focus on R&D in terms of developing the UAE's first potato seed. So we do have a lot of dreams.
So a broad range of perspectives here. Dr. Tarifa, can you just start us out with a little history lesson, if you will, going back even before 1999 when you all started? And you know, the UAE, of course, has just a long history, given its desert environment, of ag tech, ag innovation. So what are the history lessons we've learned that we're taking forward?
The history of the UAE is very rich in agriculture. If we start thinking of the founder of the nation, Sheikh Zayed, he thought of agriculture. Again, give me agriculture and I'll give you civilization. And it's very much important, and it is pretty much embedded in the culture. I think innovation came because of the harsh environments that they lived in. So they had to think of solutions that related to water scarcity, related to sand, and the ability of growing different crops suitable for the harsh environment. And also looking at how can they really consider different type of crops that are nutritious. So that's where our inspiration comes. Again, we continue to learn from what they started. What we do at the center to continue on the footsteps of what they've done is really looking at all those best practices in agriculture and try to make them science and innovation based. Again, technology didn't exist in the past. However, they found their own way to find solutions for agriculture. Now the question is, we do have the enablers when it comes to technology. We do have the enablers when it comes to the governmental support and also the financial resources and funding. How can we really build a better formula? And how can we make sure that we capture all those items we have and we put them together to give us the best solution? Human capital, again, investing and ensuring that we develop a human capital and people when it comes to research and innovation to take it forward to the future.
I'm curious, just as a follow-up, you speak to the just really strong resources that the UAE is marshaling from, Gadan 21, various international partnerships, the like. What are you most excited about these days when you think about kind of marshaling these resources and bringing a few things forward?
Well, we're proud of what the UAE did. Again, to start with, is having a national strategy on food security. To start with, that's very much important. One of the enablers is we do have a minister who has a vision and has been enabled to have a vision by the government. Having women being part of this formula is very important, and also investing in youth. We're looking at our education system, we're looking at our universities, and we find that there is 100%, I would say even 110% awareness about what's happening, about climate change, and being aware of all those challenges. I am excited about the way forward. I am excited about how wise is the government when it comes to not only having plans for the UAE, but also having strategic plan of collaborating with others. I mean, look at the global, look at Expo, and look at the celebration around food and around innovation when it comes to food. We work with Sustainable Development Goals. Goal number 17 is about partnership. So I think it's partnership what makes it happy. And makes it happen, 1 + 1 is equal 11. So that's where we go.
That's terrible math, but that's okay. I'm going to no. So thank you, though, for setting the table for us on just the national context that we're kind of sitting in right now. Joe, I want you to now nerd out for us for a minute and tell us about vertical farming. It's buzzy. We hear about it a lot, but just explain to sort of the lay listener what is vertical farming and how does it sit alongside traditional farming?
Sure. I'd love to. So without nerding out too much, the idea of vertical farming has actually been around for a very long time, but not as we know it. So the idea of modern vertical farming is essentially, so traditional farming, you would have crops grown on a horizontal surface across a large swath of land. Vertical farming is essentially growing crops stacked vertically on top of each other. Now, if you take it a bit further, with controlled environment agriculture, you can essentially do the same thing in a confined space, closed off from external forces, and you can control humidity, temperature, light, nutrients. It's amazing what we've done and how far we've come.
So when you talk about vertical farming, that's all very logical. You're building vertically, but can you talk about a bit more about the tech layers that go in? Is there monitoring? I would imagine there's just kind of implications for water efficiency and those sorts of things. What are some of the benefits of vertical versus traditional?
Sure. So one of the benefits with vertical farming is you have increased crop yields. Okay, the fact that you can control these different factors, your crop yield increases. For instance, with traditional farming, you would have disease, pestilence, pests, drops in temperature, which would affect your yield. You would have a lot of tip burns, maybe one season and whatnot. So with vertical farming, you would pretty much minimize that greatly. Another thing is vertical farms are, research suggests that it's 90%, you save water up to 90% more than traditional farming methods. Yeah.
When you think about, yes, and I'm getting to you, I promise. When you think about, though, just the benefits of vertical farming here in particular, why does the UAE lend itself? We've just seen like a hive of activity around vertical farming in the last few years. Why is this region a particularly good candidate for vertical farming?
100%. That's a great question. We live in an arid country. okay? The desert, non-arable land. Food security is on the agenda right now with governments across the world, and especially with the UAE Ministry of Climate Change and Environment. So that's why it's very important. That's why it's buzzworthy. So a lot of people are focusing on how to move forward in protecting, our food systems and making it more sustainable for the future.
Thank you. Okay, so Yazin, Joe is our vertical farming guide today. You are agritourism. So tell us more about agritourism and just the potential it has here in the UAE.
Well, today, as the focus, of course, is moving towards sustainability, and people really want to experience a different kind of travel and experiences. We opened up the farm to tourism about 2018, 2019, and it was supposed to be just one day to, welcome some guests to the farm, and we were overwhelmed with the response. And we realized that people really have this need to go out and connect with nature, and also take the children that, these days everybody moved to an urban environment, so they're completely disconnected from food systems, from agriculture. And what's interesting about Emirates Biofarm is it wasn't a restaurant or an agritourism project that, farms. It's a farm. It's a fully commercial farm. We farm on 25 hectares. We produce 4 tons every day of organic vegetables. We do 15,000 eggs every single day. So people are coming and looking at actual large-scale agriculture. And, on the education point of view, that's really helping shape the conversation on food security, on everything. When people can come and actually experience agriculture, they become way more well-informed. Yeah.
I'm curious what you're actually hoping people learn when they visit the farm. What are you hoping that they take away at the end of the day?
Well, there's there's a lot that we need to educate on. First of all, when it comes to sustainability, we have big challenges, and we can't really fall asleep at the wheel. For example, with vertical farming, it's saving space, and we talk about it in terms of agriculture, but in reality, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's growing lettuce. So agriculture is too broad. That's one problem that we have. Fisheries has nothing to do with what I do, has nothing to do with what they do, and cattle and animal production. And most agriculture, to be honest, is cereals. So we're doing wheat and corn and animal feed and sugars and coffee, and all of that needs its own solutions, and we're not talking about any of it. We are solving for lettuce or strawberries. That's a problem. We're not destroying the Amazon for these products. So we really need to talk about different solutions. It needs to be a multi-pronged approach. What are the different sustainable agriculture methods that we need to tackle? And that's what ICBA is doing. Yeah.
I want to open this up to the wider group here and just talk a little bit more about consumer education, and just if you agree that it is important. Are there other levers that should be pressed first or as a priority, be it regulation, be it export priorities? But in terms of consumer education, what are your efforts, and is it part of some of your most important work, or is it a lesser priority?
We believe at ICBA, consumer education starts from the early process, understanding what is the climate change issues. What is it about? Why are we shifting to more sustainable approaches when it comes to agriculture? What's really happening around them? So that's the first part for them, because they need to understand what they eat. If they don't understand the challenge, I think we will not be able to amend or impact any kind of behavior. The other thing is looking also at the process, again, whether if they are in the farming industry. We are trying to encourage people, even youth, to be inspired. We designed a program, for example, called ICBA Yes, Youth Engagement Society. We educate them, we inspire them about what's happening around them, especially in marginal environment. We try to connect them with each other. We live in the same, and we share the same resources in the global as a whole. So we're responsible of all those resources. And we also try to push for biodiversity. They need to change their dietary system. They need to look to eat something that grows in their own environment. They need to be friends to what they eat, because that's really represent them, their health and their sustainability of the planet. And last is really to encourage them to become agripreneurs. We have so many entrepreneurs in different fields, but how about the field of agriculture? So this is really part of the awareness that we are creating. Again, understanding what they eat. Saliconia is something that we researched. We have something called holophatic kitchen. We teach them how to cook these recipes that are near to their environment and part of their environment. So it's not only about the issues itself, it's about processing, and I'm sure they'll talk about also about waste management. So the whole cycle to be brought up part of it.
Sorry?
Please,
Yeah.
please, by all means.
So just to add to Dr. Tarifa, what she said, sustainability in food systems really need to be localized. So what you eat, if we all switch to almond and avocados around the world and it's a single menu, that's a problem. Even if it's more plant-based, the issue is you then stress out specific countries and specific communities. Whereas we need to look at what we produce, what we can produce here in a sustainable manner. And we see in the past few years, the Bay oysters, for example, starting production in the ocean, and they don't need any inputs, and it seems to be a sustainable way. It's filtering the water and capturing carbon. And then halophytes with Salicornia, introducing it. So getting the chefs to be our ambassadors for our local food. And that's the challenge. We have a restaurant at the farm. It's not about being a vegan restaurant. It's actually just cooking what we produce, which makes it even a couple of levels more difficult, but more interesting. How can we make our diets? Have we looked at camel milk? Have we looked at dates and all these interesting things that are produced here? Yeah.
So I think to add on to both of the replies, consumer engagement and education is tantamount to make change. And what I mean is it begins with government, policy, working together with the private sector, such as individuals like Yazin and I, working with the education system, and working with children in a sense where if you were to ask a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old about sustainability, to be honest, they probably wouldn't have much to say about it. You know, it's not the first thing on their minds. So in order for them to think about it, we have to pose the question first. So we all have to work together, even retail operators. You know, it's like we have to show them the door, but we have to continually show them the door for them to walk through the door. I can't expect my nephew or niece to talk to me about food sustainability and food security if they don't even know about it. So we have to pose the question to them first.
I do think Gen Z has a lot to teach us, and they're very concerned about climate change. But to your point, we really the point is taken that the communication really needs to be there. The menus need to be exciting and diverse, and that they need to really think local first. This needs to come domestically. Joe?
Sure,
Yes.
sorry, and to add on that, it's not even just educating the children, it's the parents as well. Especially living in a diverse nation. We have so many cultures, and if you take a look at food anthropology, all these different communities, we eat different foods, and it's so hard to eat sustainable and healthy if throughout time, through tradition, they're used to eating a certain way, and they don't know how to eat any different. So we also have to educate the parents as well when it comes to food anthropology.
Just to add to that point, a lot of the agriculture industry starts with the sentence 90% of food is imported here, and immediately what everybody assumes is because we don't produce it. Of course, that is an aspect, but just like Joe said, I mean, there are different, I want my food from Syria, or somebody wants from Philippines or Mexico. You know, it's 100 plus countries and nationalities. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is menus. If suddenly avocados or acai, or so, then we're going to import that. We're not cooking for what's local. And third is obviously the supermarkets and cost. It doesn't matter how much tomatoes we produce. They're going to have to still keep Netherlands and Spain and Lebanon and what have you, because of this is how the system is. So in reality, there are a lot of products that we can be 100% sustainable in, but it's just we are open to trade with the rest of the world. So that means that we have to compete on price and many things, just like any imported product. And sometimes we cannot.
That's really interesting and segues me well into the next question around the power of international partnerships. They seem particularly relevant in the UAE, and as somebody who is in the headlines business, there seems to be an announcement with regularity, the UAE partnering with the US, with the Netherlands, with Korea, what have you. But from your each individual perspectives, what have your partnership experiences been on this front, and what have you learned?
Given that ICBA is an international center, I mean, our partnership with different countries and different organizations is very much important. It's in fact the core of what we do, because we do international projects in different rural areas and rural communities. So the collaborations is either around the innovative solutions that we tested at our center or we developed in our center, and then we do have to take it and apply it somewhere else. This process of applying the solution somewhere else is require a lot of partnership with the National Research Center in order for us to pilot what we've done, because if something grows under the climate condition of the UAE is not necessarily is going to grow under the same climate condition somewhere else. So we have to pilot our research. We can't do anything without the effort of partnering with research center in these countries. The other thing is partnership is quite seen when it comes to working with farmers, because we're talking about transferring knowledge and applying solutions to people who may not even speak our language and not necessarily even they speak English language. So we have to also close this language barriers and ensure that we are close to them. We design something called farmer field schools. We make sure that we transfer the knowledge to them. Without, again, the power partnerships, we wouldn't be able to do this. Our mission is also crafted around the sustainable development goals. So again, if we're talking about deployment of solutions in one country, we will refer to what can we do globally and what we can do locally in that sense. Another thing is really, I'm back to the capital, human capital. Again, there are so many wonderful brains in this world. Again, we cannot do much without building on what other people has been achieved. There is no point in science to reinvent the wheel. We have to start from where other people finished, and also how can we really take our solutions to them. So I would say partnership is very, very much important to us.
For us as producers, we've always heavily relied on other countries, especially Dutch technology, historically speaking. But what we have, started working on mostly is how to adapt it to our needs and our climate and our requirements. Also, how to we trial a lot of products. So now I just received some products from Spain to do with connected, soil moisture sensors and heat sensors to manage my irrigation better. And a lot of these companies have already did the R&D with research centers like ICBA, but now to get the farmers on board, there's a whole also learning, and we try to open the farm up to as many of that as possible, as long as they give it to me for free, and then I'll trial it. And yeah, so these are the kind of partnerships that we're working on.
I'm wondering from both of you, actually, since you spoke just now about farmer education, if you could both just dig into that a bit deeper and give us some color or detail on what that work looks like.
For us, interestingly, because I'm in the organic, I'm specialized in the organic industry. It's basically coming around. Organic was born by a gentleman traveling to India and taking back some of those learnings and establishing some kind of certification program that uses these farming methods. But then now when you bring it to our arid climate, I'm finding that some of the practices do not work for me, and I'm finding that we're developing now at this point. We're as close to Mars as it gets. So I feel like what we can solve for here and what we can develop here is going to solve for a lot of future challenges that others are going to face. So funny enough, now we are working with farmers, but more like equals instead of learning. Now we're saying, okay, this is what we're doing. and they say, okay, that's interesting, let me show you what I'm doing. And now we're actually at the point where we're adding to the knowledge instead of just absorbing. Yeah.
For us, I would say working with farmers, being a research institute and we speak the scientific language, it becomes a challenge for us that we always try to find solution for, is to break this scientific facts into applied practices. So first of all, it's very important that we have communication with them. A phrase I would say is see it to believe it. I mean, I think that's where farmers would like to, I mean, again, prove this works for me and how long it's going to work. And if I do it, would there be a return on investment? Or it's not just one of those fancy concepts you bring and you would like to experiment on us. The farmer field schools, sometimes farmers comes from different educational backgrounds. So we try to also work with the one who are educated. They can easily disseminate the information and knowledge to other farmers that they can understand their language better, and they don't really feel like we are trying to promote a scientific solution for them without engaging them in the process. Females, women, is a very important sector and stakeholder of what we do. So through capacity development and knowledge transfer, we make sure that we design programs specifically targeting women, women farmers, and also women leaders in agriculture. So we designed the program called أولى, Arab Women Leaders in Agriculture, where we educate them because we believe that farmers also need somebody to sit on the decision-making and policy-making table to make sure that their voice is being heard and being represented. So that's part of the training that we are trying to do. Another stakeholders is the school students as well. I mean, we start teaching them about soil and how can they really do some practices when it comes to farming. And so they are our young farmers.
I still remember growing a lima bean in second grade, so that's relevant. Joe, can you just speak a bit more on partnerships and what you've learned?
Sure. I'm not going to go deep into it, but long answer short, partnerships are great. Okay. From a sustainability standpoint, let's say, for example, if our team was working on a challenge our own, we would spend a lot of time and resources trying to find a solution. But then if we have multiple partners and they're working on the same challenge, we're cutting down the time, right? Trying to find the result. So it's a wonderful thing. I can't stress enough how great international partnerships are.
Thank you. Quick learning. What have you learned from a partnership? Just quick, concrete. Give us an example.
I mentioned it. It saves resources.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yazan, I want to talk to you about food waste. And so food security, can't talk about food security without food waste. The UN says 17% of the food that we produce goes into the trash bin. So what sort of levers can we be pushing in innovation and technology around food waste these days?
Is that 17%?
17. Do you want to fact check me?
Yeah.
It's making me nervous.
Probably. No, it feels, like working in the industry, it feels like it's like 50. Yeah. Because, well, there's many layers of food waste. So production on the field where there's a failure in the crop, or then after that there's quality, maybe a quality issue or a size issue or an appearance issue. So that's waste at the farm. Then there's unsold product that gets wasted. And then you have the layer of in the industry, in the food industry, in the F&B industry, in the restaurants, in the hotels, in the catering. You have food waste, you have at-home food waste, you have retail shelved food waste. So there's so many layers. That's why 17, yeah.
And what you're pointing out here is just at every step of the way there's wastage, there's loss.
And it's calculated into the cost. Basically, you're importing a container of avocados, you're paying for the shipping. You need 7 tons, you buy 10. I mean, because the cost, you're just filling a container for it.
Okay, so thinking about at which step can we drill down and introduce some technology or innovation sort of fixes? What would you say? What are you seeing that's exciting?
Well, basically, we just have to look at our history. Now that we've kind of abused food production and done it so wastefully, now we have to go back to why jams and pickles and fermenting was invented, is to save the food that you can't consume immediately. And that's why, recently we just launched a product that's basically farm-made pickles and jams and sauces to create a secondary product from the food waste. And we have another dreamer here, Mr. Patrick from Inc. They did a dinner where they put ugly vegetables in jewelry boxes with spotlights on them to send a message that this shouldn't be thrown away. So yeah, we're heavily involved in the conversation about food waste, but for us, it's about at the farm level, at the production level, and then we leave the F&B up to the people that work in that industry.
No, that's interesting. And I mean, what you're pointing out really, though, is that you guys are taking a really artisanal kind of creative approach, and it's about marketing. It's about rebranding something that's relatively unloved. It's not about a tech fix. Joe, I'm curious to bring it to you in vertical farming. Yazan just pointed out there's a lot of wastage on the farm front. Does vertical farming solve for any of that? Is there less loss there?
Okay, so a quick example would be with crops grown in vertical farms, the quality is a lot better than crops grown. I mean, maybe you would attest to this. The quality of crops grown in vertical farms is a lot better than the quality of crops grown traditionally. And with that, let's say, for example, you would go to a retail outlet, Carrefour or Spinneys, and you would buy a head of lettuce. By the time you take it home a few hours later, it's already probably wilted in your fridge. Compared to the quality of a vertically farmed lettuce, it lasts longer. You can even extend that to berries as well and tomatoes grown vertically.
Thank you. Dr. Tarif, I want to switch gears a bit. You spoke about the importance of educating farmers, educating students, but I want to talk a bit more about social impact approach and thinking about social impact in developing countries. What are you seeing that's working? What are some models that you're excited about? And what role does social impact play in this ag tech conversation?
When we speak about the social impact, we think about how can we, again, impact the socio-economic developments of those countries when it comes to agriculture and the impact of it on individuals as well. So if we look at the concept of farm to fork, and how can we really work with all those farmers to ensure that they're not only growing something that is suitable for the environment, but also something that will be able to make them earn sustainable money. And that's where we create sometimes new jobs for youth, especially when we work in the rural area. We make sure that youth do not migrate to the cities, and then they cause another sort of issues and challenges. So we look at it from different dimensions. As I mentioned earlier, with the education and awareness, we start with women. We see the impact of women, not only on the families, but also on the society. We look at women and their impact on decision making as well, on the decision making table. We look at youth and how can we really ensure that we educate them, we equip them so they don't migrate from their own cities, they stay there, they contribute to the economic development of those villages. When we speak about involving technologies, we know that the farmer populations globally is growing old. And if we are promoting for technologies, again, with defining old now is different. What old age in the past considered is no longer old now. So they are receptive of innovation and embedding technologies in farming. However, we are making it more sophisticated. Sometimes we're talking about high-tech technologies. Not every society needs a high-tech technology. Sometimes we promote for a low-tech technology. Something will be suitable where it can bring them to the fact that they produce more food with fewer resources. And that's what we try to achieve in order to make sure that the holistic approach is being achieved when it comes to the development of those communities.
Thank you. I want us to end on a forward-looking note and be positive, but before we get to that, I do want us to reflect on the challenges that we're still facing in these sectors. We don't obviously live in a perfect food system, otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. So what are the challenges that you're seeing in your work, and how are they going to be addressed in the years ahead?
I'll start with resources, natural resources, again, water. There is no food without water. There is no agriculture without it. And again, I think the challenge with water is we know that water is scarce. 12 out of 17 countries, most stressed water resources of those countries fall in Middle East and North Africa. So what are we doing about it? Also, when we speak about water, again, treated wastewater is something that people are not using for different reasons. Or again, we're talking about brine and brackish water desalinate from bypass product of desalination. How is it being used and what is the harm of it of the environment? If everybody is desalinating seawater, then we are also dealing with another issues that will impact the environment. So try to work together to find solution related to, again, irrigating with seawater, irrigating with saline water, trying to find crops that suitable for the environment when it comes to our marginal environment. I think these are the issues we need to push for.
For us, as Dr. Tarifa said, obviously water is one of the biggest challenges, and that is why, the conversation around closed environment agriculture is very appealing for the UAE because of the circularity of the water in the system. So I hope to see the science try and produce more crops in these systems. For us, treated wastewater now in Abu Dhabi is going to be connected to farms, which hasn't even been done in Europe. So this is a new achievement being done. And then desalination is now being used to replenish some aquifers. Of course, landscaping you're not allowed to use water. It's all treated wastewater. So there's a lot of programs when it comes to water saving. But the problem, it seems like whenever we do, let's say, sustainable energy or water, we always find the extra capacity, we start abusing it or using it again. So it's about how to reduce our water use. And this is the same challenge in whether it's South Africa or California or India. It's the same topic, depleting aquifers and encroaching, saline water. So water is number one, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you. Joe?
The biggest challenge I'd have to say, it's not a tech problem with us. I speak about this and I debate about this and I have discussions about this topic with my colleague Wishak, our farm operations manager at Smart Acres. We talk about, it's hard for us to reconcile the idea that are we doing enough in a sense that I give my hats off to Yazin and Dr. Tarifa because she mentioned educating farmers and talking to them in such a way that it's not too technical. You're disseminating information where they can understand, and you're doing that with agritourism, with families and children. And I really do thank you both for doing that. But that's the challenge that I feel, regardless of tech. We're not doing enough socially. Okay, it's kind of like sales and marketing. Sales can do what they can to make sure your item is on the shelf, but without the proper marketing for the consumer to actually know what they're buying, they're not going to know it and they're not going to buy it. So it's like we're gatekeeping all this information. It's lovely that we're doing all these events and we're talking about it amongst us in the industry, but if you were to ask someone down the street, if you were to go to Barsha Heights or Satwa, do you know about sustain? They're not going to know. As much as we talk about it here, and that's what I have this hard time trying to reconcile. How can we make sure that the general public knows about this, especially the kids? Because when they get older, they're going to be the ones taking our places. They're going to be the ones driving change in the industry. So we have to make sure that they know what we're doing.
I'm going to stick with you for a minute. So do you think we're moving fast enough? Are we doing enough? And looking ahead to 2050, which is sort of the date that's fixed, I think, in all of our minds as our divine future, where we've either made it or broken it. When you look ahead to 2050, what is the ideal realization of the work that you're doing right now if we were to move fast enough and we were to do enough?
Sure. I believe that we are moving on a good pace with technology. We really are. There's an abundance of startups and large corporations around the world that are pushing for innovation. That's fine. But we are not doing enough and we're not working fast enough in terms of educating. As I just mentioned prior, we are not doing enough. But I love the fact that the UAE government is doing something about it now regarding the Food for Life campaign with Emirates Nature WWF and the FAO and the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment with the Ministry of Prevention and Health, and then with the Food-Wise Challenge with Gumbuk. They're doing an amazing thing with educating university students and high school students, with posing them the question of how can we change the future with food security and sustainability? What are your answers? Let us know. So we are doing something about education, and I love that, but we're not moving fast enough yet.
Thank you. Yazin, I want to, Emirates Biofarm, take us to 2050. Are we moving fast enough? Are we doing enough? But if we were in 2050, what does the biofarm look like? And what have you accomplished?
The biofarm is an integrated agriculture center, so circularity is the big key for us to unlock. How do I have animal agriculture, fish agriculture, insects, proteins, algae, whatever, mushrooms that are using all the resources as efficiently as possible, all the water as efficiently as possible? How am I obviously growing at the right, using the right technology for the right climate. When I need to be indoors, I'm indoors. When I need to be outdoors in this great weather 6 months a year, I'm outdoors. I'm using the free energy, the free sunlight, the free climate control. So this is kind of and I have people on the farm, different production units. So maybe pickling and jamming and different people making cheese and byproducts of all these of productive aspects of the farm, and then reusing the waste in a circular manner. So just circularity is the key word that I'm looking for.
Sounds good. Dr. Tarifa, you're going to get the last word here. 2050 for the UAE food system. I know you've had a long day, but this one's for you.
UAE is moving fast, and I think we have steady steps, and I think there is a strategic plan by the government, and I think everybody is part of it. Acknowledging that there is a problem is 50% of the solution, and I think we have done that fast. I believe collaboration is something that will bring us fast to the results that we are looking for. In the past, the climate change is something that we used to hear about in books and universities. And now as climate change impact is something that we are living in day-to-day operation. And we are tackling it, and we're talking about it, and we are together having, talking about solutions that will be sustainable. On a global level, since ICBA is international, basically is we are striving to see the sustainable livelihood in marginal environments. Marginal environments because their impact, the climate change impact on them is even harsher, and it's more strong, and that's where we need to cultivate more effort and resources to ensure that vulnerable communities are being supported.
Thank you. Dr. Tarifa, Yazin, Joe, you're each dreamers here at the UAE Pavilion, and we're all rooting for you and those dreams. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of you all here in the pavilion and watching live. That's it. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.